Bienvenue à Paris. The French capital has been an object of fascination for centuries, and it's one of the most visited cities in the world.
And what's not to love? By day or by night, it's a beautiful city full of towering monuments, inspiring museums, and romantic cafes.
And yet tourists often say Paris would be so nice if it weren't for the Parisians. So where does the bad reputation come from?
Join us as we turn the spotlight on the City of Light and its peculiar inhabitants, les Parisiens. One of the most fascinating things about Paris is its rich history, and a lot of it is still visible if you pay close attention.
Paris first started over 2,000 years ago as an ancient fishing village on the banks of the Seine, a little downstream from where we are today, not far from Notre Dame Cathedral. The word Paris actually came from the very first inhabitants, a Celtic tribe known as the Parisians.
But in 52 BC, the village fell into the hands of the Romans, who called it Lutèce, as fans of the Asterix comic book series know very well.
Paris was only officially named Paris some 350 years later, and it only became the capital of France at the start of the 6th century under King Clovis.
These days, Paris is still the center of French political power and culture.
Since the 17th century, Paris has been one of Europe's major centers of finance, diplomacy, commerce, fashion, gastronomy, science, and the arts. Ask any Parisian and they'll tell you Paris is where the action is, which probably explains why so many people want to live there. With nearly 2.2 million inhabitants for 105 square kilometers, Paris is one of the densest cities in the world. No wonder the metro is always packed and it's hard to find a seat at a café terrace or parking space. The city limits of Paris, intramuros, within the walls, is a big ring road that circles around the capital, called le périphérique. But the city is even bigger if you count what lies beyond. This is known as le Grand Paris. The larger region of Île-de-France is the focus of 30% of the nation's wealth and 20% of the population, but the area only accounts for 2% of France. Over history, the French capital has withstood wars, sieges, revolutions, and more recently, terrorist attacks. Events that give meaning to the city's Latin motto, fluctuat nec mergitur. She may be rocked by the waves, she does not sink.
Paris is known for the beauty of its architecture and the wealth of its culture, but it's also famous, or rather infamous, for its residents.
Well, there's the myth of the impeccably dressed intellectual Parisian man or woman, but we also have a bad reputation for our behavior.
The stereotypical Parisian is seen as being rude, arrogant, somewhat intimidating, always in a hurry, basically a snobby, moody complainer who never seems to smile.
There's actually something called Paris syndrome that some tourists can experience. Basically, it's a profound disappointment in the fact that the city isn't as beautiful, isn't as clean as they expected, and the locals aren't as photogenic or welcoming.
Paris syndrome can also be linked to the fact that it seems to rain a lot here. But getting back to the grumpy reputation, Flo, you went to meet the perfect expert to see if Parisians deserve it.
To find out more about Parisians, we're here at the Petit Littré, which is a cafe in Paris, and I'm joined by Olivier Giraud. Thank you so much for being with us today. You've written and performed in a show. It's called How to Become a Parisian in 1 hour. Now, unfortunately, we don't have an hour, but can you give us a crash course in the basics as to how to become a Parisian?
I think Parisian is like an attitude. You have to be kind of arrogant, you know, a kind of look with the eyebrow. I don't know if you can try the. Yeah, you're Parisian, okay. That the way you dress as well. I would say it's always black, and if you're a bit crazy, you can put some gray. Okay, that's the Parisian way. And yeah, Parisian is always in a hurry, and that's it.
You can recognize an American tourist because they're wearing white tennis shoes. What would you say is the way you recognize a Parisian? Is there like a Parisian outfit?
The scarf. If it's cold, you wear a scarf, and if it's hot, you wear a scarf. Yeah, for sure. And you can see the attitude. I must say that Parisians are a bit classy, you know, and you can see a difference between like Parisian and somebody from little village in Brittany, for example.
And we often say that Parisians are always in a bad mood. Why do you think Parisians have that reputation?
Life in Paris is not very easy. I think it's the same everywhere, like in New York or London. And it's true, we're always in a bad mood. If you take the metro in the morning, it's like a nightmare.
When you hear the train coming, just stand up and go close to the rails. When the doors are opening, just push everybody to get a free seat. And you're gonna hear somebody getting out of the train saying, "Can you wait before getting in? We need to get out." Just say, "Je ne parle pas français." And you're gonna hear this very famous Parisian triple sound, "Oh la la!" Then run and get a free seat.
In a way, Parisians sometimes are kind of proud of their bad reputation. Why is that?
Yeah, they are, because like during my show, so I've got a lot of Parisians coming. I will say half of the audience are from Paris. And when I make jokes about Parisians, I can hear like, "Yeah, I'm like this," and they're so proud. After the show, I always say bye to everybody, and never happen that a Parisian says, "You're right, I'm going to change. We are horrible." No, we are proud to be horrible. Parisians.
Well, would you say the Parisians have any qualities, and if they do, what are they?
So I would say they very curious about like culture. They go to museum a lot, cinema, theater, very open about arts. Hard worker, because it's very hard in Paris. All my friends are working like 10 or 12 hours per day. They are very honest. Yeah, I think it's a good, very good quality.
So not just bad things about Parisians then?
No, very good things, yeah.
There's one type of Parisian that tends to get a lot of attention, and that is the bobo, so the bourgeois bohème. How would you define a bobo?
So a bobo, I would say it's a Parisian would really think that it's very important to take care of the planet, but they travel like 20 times per year. They eat organic, but they love McDonald's as well. And most of the time they live like in a 10th arrondissement, and it's very funny because there is like a Canal Saint-Martin, and if you want to see a bobo, that's the place.
Do you think that there is such a thing as a definitive Parisian, or are there different kind of subtle Parisians?
I would say there is different type of, like the bobo, you can find them in the 10th arrondissement, then you're very rich people like in the 16th arrondissement, on the 6th, on the 5th, like north of Paris, it's totally different. People are more like simple. No, there's not one kind of Parisian, there was like 20.
Olivier, thank you so much for being on the show. If you want to see Olivier's show, you can go to the Théâtre des Nouveautés near Opéra, and you can learn how to become a Parisian in 1 hour.
Thank you very much.
So Parisians have a lot of quirks that actually annoy other French people outside of Paris.
Well, a lot of the cliches about French people, that they're rude and arrogant and in a bad mood, are actually Parisian cliches, and so it's not really fair for the rest of the country.
There's almost a universal hatred of Parisians by other French people, and it goes both ways.
Well, a lot of Parisians have a superiority complex and look down on the rest of the country. In fact, they think there's not much going on outside of the capital, which is the best city in the world, remember. So why would you live anywhere else?
It can be summed up by Paris Province, Paris versus the provinces, a condescending name given by Parisians to anywhere in France that's not Paris.
And if Parisians are proud of their city, they're even prouder of the neighborhood that they live in.
It's called the most beautiful city in the world, the city of love, and it's shaped like a snail. Paris is divided into 20 administrative districts known as les arrondissements. Each district has its own mayor and town hall. They spiral outwards, clockwise from the city center, just like a snail's shell.
But an arrondissement is much more than just a number. It's an identity.
Each arrondissement has its own unique personality and characteristics, making it hard to choose which neighborhood is best.
Saint-Germain-des-Prés, Épinal, Je dirais le Marais, c'est très sympa.
Le 5e, là où j'ai fait mes études.
Belle ville, parce que c'est un peu bobo.
Il n'y a pas vraiment de quartier que j'aime pas. Il y a des quartiers dans lesquels j'aime plus aller, mais que j'aime pas, non.
J'aime bien flâner dans Paris, découvrir Paris. On trouve toujours quelque chose dans Paris de nouveau.
To add to the complexity, the River Seine runs right through the city.
Neighborhoods south of the river are called rive gauche, left bank, because they're on your left-hand side when you're looking downstream. And so that means the northern part of the city is called rive droite, the right bank. So what's better, rive gauche or rive droite?
Ah non, je réponds pas à ce genre. Les deux. Je vais me promener rive droite, mais après je rentre rive gauche.
Plutôt rive gauche. Et pourtant, là, c'est quelque chose qui change très nettement. La rive droite, ça se passe rive droite à Paris, hein, très clairement.
The one thing all Parisians can agree on is that once you cross the périphérique, you're no longer really in Paris. It's a psychological jump many aren't ready to take.
Many of you sent in your questions about Paris and Parisians, like Stuart Russell, who wanted to know, since Paris is such an expensive city to live in, how do Parisians actually afford it?
Well, that's a great question, Stuart, and Paris certainly is expensive, especially the rents here. Now, in theory, there are laws that regulate rent and also ensure that 20% of Paris houses are open to social housing. But the truth of the matter is more and more poor families and middle-class families are being priced out of the city and the center, and a lot of people are worried that Paris could just become a museum city, open and accessible to the rich.
Next, Jennifer wanted to know, are Parisians more dog people or cat people?
Well, Jennifer, I think this is my favorite question of all time. And you might think that all the dog poop in the street would speak for itself, but I like to think that Parisians would like to think that they're dog people, but they're actually cats themselves.
Poor Parisians. Let me just say from experience, whether you're coming from abroad or even from Provence, it seems everyone becomes a little bit Parisian once they live here, with all the good sides and the bad.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Thank you for watching, and please keep tweeting me your questions at Villeminot.
And we'll see you soon for a new French Connections Plus.